Today I'm going to provide an introduction to Messianic Judaism and the covenant God made with Abraham. Welcome to Messianic Monday. Hi, my name is Caleb D. Wilson. I believe that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. Welcome back to Messianic Monday. If you please consider to hit that subscribe button. I make content educating people about the Jewishness of Jesus, so every subscription really helps. The introduction to Messianic Judaism, brought to you by me, and also we're sponsored by Learn with the Levites. So some of you might be like, okay, who's this random guy who's on YouTube, who thinks he knows everything? Well, I've been a disciple of Rabbi Darren Katz for about a few years now, and so he's been in the industry, Messianic Jewish, teaching about Messianic Judaism and the Jewishness of Jesus for about 20 years now. So everything I'm going to teach you today is what he taught me. And so you know that this is going to be some really good information for you. And this is just going to be some basics. There's going to be a lot of episodes I'm going to do just kind of talking about a lot of concepts here. So I'm just going to give you, for this day, I'm just going to give you like a really general summary of what is this belief system that I even believe in. So let's see if I can hit the right button. There we go. So to begin this, I want to have a disclaimer. So in my attempt to present theology that is biblically sound, I will frequently bring up theology from traditional Judaism, in quotations, and Christianity. In that process, I may say things that criticize those institutions. When I criticize institutions of religion, it is not equivalent to criticizing people who believe in those religions. I love Christians, and I love Jews who adhere to a different form of Judaism. My goal is to present Messianic Judaism as a legitimate form of Judaism, and as the religion that both Jewish and Gentile apostles of Jesus adhered to. I do not wish to upset anyone. With that said, the highest calling in my life is to die for the sanctity of the Torah and God's covenant he made with the forefathers. That takes precedence, and I accept that many people will feel hurt in spite of this disclaimer. I have only the deepest love and intentions to do my part to invite God to come and live with us. Shalom. Okay, so let's talk about these different, I guess we'll say, Abrahamic religions. Now, some people might want to throw Islam in there. I'm not going to throw Islam in there. I think that's a completely different religion and quite demonic, to be honest. But I'm going to focus on some of the differences because I think people don't understand what Messianic Judaism is, and I think the way to do that is first explain some of the other religions so that we can see some of the differences. So we're going to examine traditional Judaism. Now, I put traditional in quotations because sometimes there's beliefs of Judaism that really differ. Sometimes the propensity to uphold customs, traditions, and a text like the Talmud or the any Kabbalistic books, they can sometimes people want to act like those are more important and more holy than the Torah. So that's where it can get quite messy. But so I put that in quotations because I'm trying to explain to you a general idea of what Judaism is that's not Messianic Judaism. So we believe, or traditional Judaism believes in Israel as God's covenant people to bless the nations. They hold to the teachings of the Torah, and they believe in the Messiah, son of David, and that he will come and offer Israel salvation. However, they don't see Jesus as the Messiah, and they think that he was rightfully rejected. Christianity, Jesus is the Messiah, and he fulfills the law. I put that in quotations because their understanding of fulfill is quite different to what I'm going to present to you in this series, what the actual interpretation of that really means. So Israel is rejected as God's people because they rejected Jesus. And so then they believe that the church is the spiritual successor. So all the promises that were for Israel are given to the church. And then faith is in competition with the law. We only need faith for salvation. So we don't, according to Christianity, we shouldn't follow the law of Moses anymore. And that it's in competition with faith, and that faith is our only avenue to inheriting salvation in the world to come. And that brings us to Messianic Judaism, the faith I'm going to promote today. We believe in Israel as God's covenant people to bless the nations. We believe that Messiah, son of David, was Jesus. But we hold to the teachings of the Torah. However, faith in Jesus is what justifies us not keeping Torah. Justify meaning what we'll find as innocent at the judgment time. So we don't think that our ability to keep the Torah is going to sustain us and allow us to enter eternity. We think that Jesus' blood, if we have faith in him, will do that. Okay, so now you might be asking the question, okay, well, that's weird. So you believe that your pathway to eternity is Jesus, so why would you even want to follow the Torah? Well, Jews keep the Torah because the Jewish people have to look different. So that's a fundamental it's a fundamental part of the identity of the Jewish people, is that we have to look different than the world. And that was one of the things that the law of Moses accomplishes. And then Moses commanded that we keep and teach the Torah for every generation. In Deuteronomy 6:7, Moses told us, "You shall teach them diligently," them being the law, teach it diligently to your children. And then, a credible reason, we keep Torah because Jesus kept it. So in Matthew 5:17, Jesus says, "I have not come to abolish them," meaning the law, "but to fulfill them." And he actually says, quite painstakingly clear, anybody who lessens one of these commandments is going to be found to be least in the kingdom of heaven. So we hold that Jesus actually endorsed the Torah and wanted to keep it. Okay, so now we have a really broad, it's super simplistic idea of all these religions. It's not exhaustive. There's a lot more information we could probably talk about, but I just wanted to give you a snapshot of what that looks like. So I kind of create some icons to help us try to understand this in a simplistic way. So we see that traditional Judaism, they recognize the Torah, but they don't believe in Jesus. We see on the other side that Christianity believes in Jesus, but they don't believe in the Torah. Whereas Messianic Judaism, we believe in Jesus and the Torah. And so now being in this space is quite difficult, to say the least, for a person like me, because we're seen as legalists and demonic and heretics to the Christians, to Christianity, excuse me. We differ from their theology, and so wanting to bring the temple back, adhering to the law of Moses, is in competition with Jesus, is what they see, and that we're worshiping Satan by doing what we do. Traditional Judaism probably, honestly, does not like us more. Because they see us as traitors. They see that us as anti-Jewish, and they don't recognize us as a legitimate form of Judaism. And so they think that Jesus, and they get taught this because they hear a Christian form of Jesus, that Jesus came to do away with the law. So of course that does sound anti-Jewish. It sounds anti what Moses told us to do. And so most Jews, pretty much all Jews that practice traditional Judaism, don't recognize this as a legitimate form of Judaism. And that's kind of where I'm at. I don't really let the other sects of Judaism tell me that I'm not Judaism. I stand by the fact that we are Judaism, that we can be Jewish and believe in Jesus. Um, and so that's just one of the spaces that I have to operate in. Is I have to defend that very strongly. And I don't really ask for anybody to accept me. I am, we do practice Judaism. And so the way I like to equate it is how in Christianity, Baptists don't go to Pentecostals for acceptance. And in the same way, that's the way I look at it with the different sects of Judaism is you don't see Orthodox Jews going to Hasidic Jews or Karaites for justification of them being Judaism. So that's the way I present it. We are Judaism, and that's the way I market it. Okay, so I want to explain the whole reason why Israel even matters. Why does the Jewish people even exist? Because I think that is really the core. If we understand that why Israel had to exist, then it solves a lot of theological issues. It's really pretty much the core of the differences between Judaism and Christianity is why do the Jewish people exist? So I wanted to take us back to the beginning. In the beginning, God was everyone's God. Adam and Eve were decision makers and caretakers of the world. However, there was one boundary he set up. Do not eat from the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. Unfortunately, that is the very thing that happens. So we used to abide in the divine counsel with God, and we used to make decisions in this council, and God gave us authority to have dominion over the earth. We used to be caretakers. So after the fall of man, mankind abhorred God so much that God had to destroy the world and rebuild through Noah and his sons. God wanted to be the God of everyone. However, at the Tower of Babel, the nations divorced God and he separated them. So the nations said to God at the Tower of Babel, "We don't want you." And the invisible God says, "Okay, I will grant you your request, but the other gods will rule over you." And now this is a concept that's probably going to sound quite foreign to, I would think, especially to Christians. But what we understand is that in the beginning, when it says there was chaos over the waters, this isn't just a random image, that this is actually a Hebraism, a metaphor that many of the beings, the angels, the superior beings, fell from the divine council. And they're actually the reason, a majority of the reason why mankind falls apart so much that God had to destroy the world, because we learned that these beings taught mankind all sorts of secrets and knowledge, and they asked for worship, and of course we only for worship above God, I should say, and of course we cannot worship anything more than God. And so I also thought I would explain this because I forgot to. I haven't given God an icon through this. I haven't given him a picture. I've called him the invisible God. And the reason why I do this is because in Jewish thought, we don't. Moses actually told us to not make icons, make imagery of God. And the reason why we do this is because we believe that God is indescribable. He's not bound by any boxes or in simple ideas, but God is quite an undefinable entity. And so I coined the invisible God because we just don't know how to describe him. We don't know how to articulate him. And so So the invisible God gives the nations over to the lower gods, the lowercase g gods. And now, so there's a sad reality that the nations are now given over to these gods, and God gave humanity what we wanted. We wanted to be separated from God. However, he still loved them. He still loved the nations. So in order to bring the nations back to him, he had a plan. He would make a new nation that would bring them back to him one day. So now to start this nation, he had to pick somebody, but he doesn't just pick anyone. He picks a righteous man named Abraham. Now, Abraham wasn't perfect, but compared to his generation, he sought to live with a pure heart. And so God made a covenant that Abraham would become a nation. Those who bless this nation would be blessed, and those who curse this nation would be cursed. So we see that the invisible God has this ritual, we'll say a ritual, where we see well, it says right here, the scripture, when the sun had gone down and it was dark, behold, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. Okay, so what are these pieces? So God is doing a ritual to enact a covenant, and Abraham had grabbed some animals and cut them into pieces. I didn't think I wanted to present animal halves. I thought that would be a little too graphic, so I just grabbed a couple of pieces of meat to symbolize what's going on here. So now you might even be asking this question, okay, what is a covenant? Why is God even doing this ritual? Well, a covenant is a promise unto death. So if you married, or maybe you're not married, maybe you went to a wedding ceremony, you might have heard the words, death do us part. As long as you both shall live. And in a sense, when people get married, we're making a covenant. At least that's how we should view it. I don't know. Today we really think about it in those terms, but that's what was intended, is that we make a covenant with each other that we will stay faithful and loving to each other and stay by their side until death do us part. And so that's the way that God looks at this with Abraham. And so when he takes the animals and he cuts them into pieces and the halves, what's happening is it's basically a promise made in blood as the symbol of this. God's making a symbol, a ritual in blood to symbolize that he's made this covenant with Abraham. So now the question is going to be, okay, so we have a covenant, a promise unto death. What is this promise? So the promise to Abraham is this. He was going to be given the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession. God said that he would allow the Canaanites to amass in sin for 400 years before Abraham's descendants could inhabit it. The everlasting covenant would reside in Abraham's son Isaac. Abraham had a son named Ishmael, but the promise was Isaac's inheritance. And the promise was that those who bless his nation would be blessed, and those who curse it would be cursed. And so I want to just give a recap, and we'll be going into a lot more concepts throughout this series. I wanted to do a recap today and end it here. So what we learned today is Messianic Judaism believes in both Jesus and the Torah. Jews followed the Torah because Moses and Jesus said to. We were originally caretakers in Eden, but we were corrupt, so God had to destroy the world. Noah's sons became nations. The nations rejected God, and God gave them over to the other gods. God wanted to bring the nations back to him, so God made a covenant with Abraham that a nation would come from him. Covenant means promise unto death. And God's promises were an everlasting possession of the land of Canaan, an everlasting covenant with Isaac's descendants, that he would bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. So we're going to get into a lot more concepts about what our faith looks like and what our understanding of the Torah means to us. And I think it's going to be a great series. I'm excited to continue to show these slides, to give you imagery, give you ideas of how to conceptualize what Messianic Judaism is. So I want to say thank you so much for watching this video. If you please consider like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.